A few weeks ago, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, stood up in front of the British public and said this.
These rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
Now, I am an immigrant to the UK, so this speech did upset me. And I know a lot of the anti-immigrant rhetoric isn't directed to people like me. It is purely based off of racism, essentially. Racism is fueling this anti-immigrant rhetoric in the UK. And this anti-immigrant rhetoric has been around for years. It's been around since I moved over here. But it's sad to see that this racism is now being used as an excuse to change policy. Because the white paper that was released, the plans that Labour have to change the immigration system, is terrible. It's not based on any factual data. They just released it because they are scared of reform. Reform did well in the local council elections, and Labour are running scared. Because anyone who knows anything about the economy and immigration knows that these changes would be absolutely detrimental to the UK economy. Now, these changes could personally affect me if the indefinite leave to remain rule changes this year. It probably won't. This white paper will probably take months to come to fruition, if it does come to fruition. But I am up for indefinite leave to remain at the end of this year. So if I had to renew my visa, that would be $6,000 compared to the $3,000 that I would pay for indefinite leave to remain. But it's not just the money. It's the disrespect for people's lives, right? We came to the UK with the anticipation that we would be getting indefinite leave to remain after 5 years. So we planned our whole lives around it, planned our families around it. It's something that's not just, a monetary thing. Now, I'm not attached to a job because my visa doesn't force me to be attached to a job. But for the people that this will probably mostly affect, the people on work visas, they have to be attached to a job for their visa. So this would force them into jobs that they potentially don't want to do, potentially exploitative jobs as well. This is a very precarious situation that many of these immigrants will have to be in. And the people who can afford to leave the country probably will. There will probably be many immigrants leaving the country, because why would you want to stay in a country that clearly doesn't want you? Not to mention, on a competitive scale, wages are not very competitive compared to other countries. There's been a huge exodus of British doctors moving to Australia because the wages in the UK are so low. The UK is increasingly becoming a very unattractive place for immigrants, which is not a good thing because the UK needs immigrants. There are huge labor shortages in key industries such as construction, the NHS, the care industry. The care industry is already on its knees. This white paper, Keir Starmer wants to get rid of the care visa altogether, which is going to basically eliminate the care industry because there's not enough workers to work that industry. Now, you might think, oh, well, we need to get British people working these jobs. That's what Labour wants to do. Labour wants to get British people working these jobs. British people don't want to work these jobs because these jobs are exploitative. They're underpaid. But then people say, well, if you get rid of the immigrants, then these companies will be forced to pay people better. That's not really the case. There was an 81% decrease in health and care worker visa grants from 2023 to 2024. The care worker industry is still massively understaffed and is still incredibly exploitative. Private companies only care about profit margins. They don't care about workers. This is why privatizing key industries is a terrible idea. So yes, I am looking at you, Margaret Thatcher. But of course, immigrants are the easy scapegoat, right? If we get rid of all the immigrants, then our lives will be better. This is the propaganda that the likes of Nigel Farage and Reform is spouting. And this is why Labour are trying to emulate them, because they're chasing Reform voters. And they're never going to win Reform voters. Reform voters have turned their back on Labour years ago. They're ex-Tory voters. They're not going to go back to Labour or go to Labour if they never voted Labour in the first place. I don't know what Labour is doing here, trying to move so far to the right that even their own party, their own supporters are leaving them. Because that's what they're doing. They're abandoning Labour voters. But we know it's all about money, right? Rachel Reeves threatened to tax JP Morgan, one of the world's largest banks. In 2024, they generated a whopping $58.5 billion in profit. So Rachel Reeves threatened to tax them, and they threatened to leave the country, so she rescinded the threat. Immigrants are not the reason why British people can't afford to live. The reason why British people can't afford to live is because the wealthy are greedy. And JP Morgan Chase is a great example of this. Because they didn't want to be taxed, Rachel Reeves then went out and attacked the most vulnerable people in society by cutting disability benefits. I'm just so tired of immigrants being a scapegoat. And again, I know I am not typically the target of the anti-immigrant xenophobia, racism that is really ingrained in British society. I know I'm not the target of that, but it's just annoying because I don't see myself as any different to any of these other immigrants. And I can't do a video about immigrants without talking about the people coming on boats. I'm gonna briefly touch on this. This video is not planned. I haven't scripted it or anything. I'm just talking out of my ass. I'm ranting because I have a lot of things on my mind. But I'm so tired of Nigel Farage perpetuating this misinformation about the boats because the boats increased due to the Tories and Brexit. The Tories closed safe routes for asylum seekers, and Brexit forced the UK out of the Dublin Agreement, and the UK lost access to the erratic database. Both of these things were key tools to help the UK process asylum seekers. The erratic database, for example, is a database full of fingerprints of failed asylum seekers. So if someone failed asylum in another EU country, the UK would be able to track them via their fingerprints. But congratulations, now that the UK has left the EU, it's actually much harder to track criminals. So thanks, Brexiteers, for making the country less secure. The Tories, in their tenure, quadrupled government spending for asylum seekers. The hotels didn't exist before the Tories came into power. They weren't even recording boat crossings because they were so low. So if you want to blame anyone for the boats, blame the Tories. Blame yourself for voting for Brexit and blame Nigel Farage and the rest of his Brexiteer buddies for lying to you, saying that Brexit was going to help the UK secure its borders, which is the complete opposite of what happened. And yet these people have the audacity to still support Nigel Farage after he lied to them. It's insane to me. Like, it's insane to me. And yes, there has been an increase of Arab refugees because of the Arab Spring. Everything has a cause and effect. The Arab Spring, which was a series of revolutions within the Arab world against authoritarianism. And because of that, the amount of refugees from the Arab world has increased tenfold. 99% of the people that come on boats claim asylum. That doesn't mean that they become a refugee, because they only become a refugee if the government deems their asylum claim valid. But 99% of the people that come on boats claim asylum. The only way to curb the boats is to reopen safe and legal routes for asylum seekers that the Tories closed. If we open safe and legal routes for asylum seekers, we'll have more control over our borders. If they could apply at embassies, if they could apply online, there is no asylum visa. If the UK reopened safe and legal routes, that would curb demand for the boats. Not to mention, back to my point about money, who is profiting from this? The people who own the hotels are profiting from this. Graham King, the owner of Clear Springs Ready Homes, is now a billionaire thanks to the asylum crisis. So please stop blaming immigrants, start following the money, and actually learn what's really going on. Because if we keep scapegoating immigrants, then we're not actually going to solve the problems the UK is facing.